Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Randy from Tech Rescue, and I'm here today with your Tuesday's tech tip for cybersecurity to help you be prepared. In today's talk, what we're going to talk about is, are you prepared to bounce back from a disaster? Y'all, last week was really, really tough here in Texas. Well, it was tough for a lot of people because we had power outages, because the grid was overwhelmed, because we had some of our stuff offline, like the windmills and some natural gas. We had the lowest temperatures in many places that had ever been seen in recorded history. So it was a tough week for a lot of people here in Texas, and maybe it was a tough week for you. If it was a tough week for you, you can leave a comment right now. Hopefully, I'll be able to see it if all the technology works like it's supposed to. But anyway, it was a really tough week, and I talked last week during the middle of it. Um, were you prepared for it? And if you weren't, what you did. And this really relates to cybersecurity also, because being secure is something that you've got to plan for, you've got to put into practice, and you have to do. And today's topic, I'm going to talk about, are you prepared to come back from a disaster? And I want to give a little story of a kind of well, it's a client of ours that wasn't a client of ours at the time. A couple of years ago, one of their employees got an email. It was a phishing email, and it looked like it was no big deal. And they clicked on it, and nothing really happened, and they just kind of went about their way. Well, a couple of months later, while they were working, we're talking probably 20 employees with probably a half of terabyte of data. One day while they were working, this is a couple of months after this email, it didn't happen right away. While they were working, all of a sudden, this employee got a screen. Basically, something took over his screen, and it said, "Your data has been locked." And so what had happened was the bad people, the criminals, got into the network, and they were able to basically compromise the network. And then they set up an attack, and then they decided on that day to roll out the attack. And when they rolled out the attack, they put under encryption, which basically means that it's locked. They locked all of their data on that particular computer. And then this particular malware that they used also locks the data on all of the shared drives. So if they would have had, excuse me, if they would have had like one drive, probably would have encrypted that. If they did have a shared drive with all their data that everybody in the company used, and it encrypted all of that. And this is before they had ever even heard of Tech Rescue. And so they didn't know what to do. They weren't able to get their stuff back. They looked and they tried to see, and they had somebody who was in charge of backups, but that person had two other actual titles on their employee title, and neither one of them were to be the IT person. Neither one of them were to be the cybersecurity person, and neither one of them were to be the backup person. The titles were two other things that weren't related, and that person hadn't done the backups in probably months, hadn't checked on the backups in a long time. And so, to make a short story long, they basically didn't have good backups that they could just come right back from. And so they ended up calling a local IT company in their city. A person came out and spent a couple of days trying to undo the encryption, which didn't work. And then what they basically had to do was they gave up. They ended up calling Tech Rescue, and I did some research, and I told them that there was no way back from this particular malware, because the encryption key that the criminals used had never been fixed, had never been there. No one had ever found a way to undo it. And so basically they were stuck with their data, and they had already wiped their computers and reloaded them and try to fix it that way. But in the process of all of that, the part where they could have maybe paid the ransom to get their data back, that was no longer available to them because they had wiped all their data. And so I was able to look at it, to do research, and basically had to bring them the bad news. And so basically, to summarize, what happened with this company was they ended up being down about 3 more weeks after that. I was able to take their backups, and the employees at the company, excuse me, gosh, the employees at the company, they really didn't trust that this person who had other titles on their name and who kind of as a side job afterthought was doing backups. They didn't totally trust that person was taking care of it. So a lot of the employees, other than the one whose computer was locked, a lot of the employees had little backups of their own on their computer. And over the course of about 3 weeks, we were able to get them back to a place where at least they could start working again. They did lose some of their data. It was never, ever recoverable because it wasn't backed up. But here's the deal. Their plan for coming back from a disaster was to have backups, and then if something happened, to be able to restore from backups. That particular plan, had it worked flawlessly, would have taken probably 2 to 3 days to get them, or 2 days at least, to get them back up and running. Because if you're coming from backups the old school way, the way they were doing it, you would have to basically restore all of the computers using the computers that were affected with the backups that you had in place. So, but that would have worked, and 2 days is a whole lot better than 3 weeks. But because they weren't executing the plan and following up on the plan, they didn't have a way back. Thankfully, we were able to come in, kind of save the day, if you will, and kind of rebuild their data, from data on people's computers, from little files they had emailed to other people and things like that. But it took 3 stinking weeks. And I have to ask the question, could your business survive if you didn't have income, if you couldn't do any work for 3 weeks? I mean, so 2 years ago, this particular business they did survive 3 weeks without any kind of income, any kind of work, still having to pay employees. Somehow they were able to survive. In 2021, after a year of pandemic, man, I don't know if they would be able to survive 3 weeks without income, still having to pay people, after going through an entire pandemic where we had 2020 was hard on everybody. So the question I'm asking today is, are you prepared to bounce back from a disaster? You really need to have a disaster recovery plan in place. And it can't just be, oh my gosh, something horrible's happening, let's call Tech Rescue, which, although that's a good thing, and I want you to do that, but you've got to have a plan in place to where everybody knows at your company that you're doing things before the disaster. So if the disaster happens, you have a way back from it. So I'm sending out an email today or tomorrow. Hopefully you'll get it if you're on my email list, but I'm basically going to send out an email. And what I want to do is try to hook up with each person that basically runs a business, basically like get together via Zoom or a phone call or something like that. And in like 15 minutes, just talk about, do you have a disaster recovery plan in place? Are you prepared to bounce back from a disaster? It might not even take 15 minutes, but you need to know if you have it in place, and you need to know if it's being executed. So guys, that's about all that I have for today. If you have any questions or comments, please, at this point, just put them in the post that you're reading, whether that's on Facebook or on YouTube. I really would love it if you could head over to our YouTube channel and give us a like and subscribe to that, as we are starting from scratch. So we could really use your support over there. But once again, if you want to have that talk, reach out to me and we can have that talk. And so you can know that you're prepared to get back from a disaster. And also, if you know anybody in the same situation, send them to me, and we can have that talk, and we can settle it whether or not they're prepared to bounce back from a disaster. So thanks again, y'all, for tuning in, and y'all have a great rest of your day.